If you are a student who is a grade 4 or a grade 5 in GCSE maths, then keep watching. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some valuable tips and also which topics that you should really focus on over the coming few weeks so that you are ready for that first GCSE maths non-calculated paper. Now, before I begin, I'm not going to water down anything. I'm going to give you the truth pill to swallow. There are some maths that you've probably never liked before that you have to get yourself used to. Maybe you've never really liked these topics, but in order to get that GCSE grade 4 and 5, you've got to be able to access these topics as well. Now, every year on the maths papers, there are some topics you will almost guarantee to find them on the non-calculated paper. Now, I'm going to share with you some of these topics that I feel that you should work on over the coming few weeks. These are questions that you should seek out on the past exam papers and the other available resources and make sure you understand them as best as possible because the certainty of them coming up is almost guaranteed. And it doesn't matter whether you're an AQA student or an Edexcel student, these are always there. So let's begin. I'm going to be sharing with you some of my experiences as a teacher when I've been teaching students and some of the things that they always struggle with. Now remember, this video is aimed at those who are aiming for GCSE grade 4 and 5. If you're above that, you don't need to watch this video. To start off with, let's focus on algebra. Now, algebra is a vast topic, but one of the things that always comes up is things like solving equations and factorizing. Let's take factorizing for now. One of the things that students often struggle with is they don't know the difference when they should use a single bracket and a double bracket because they've done both of those things. And when they were learning it in class, it was fine because the teacher said, you're using single brackets. That's what they taught you. And then you go and do that. You do a whole bunch of questions on it and you're okay with it. You move on to double brackets. Perhaps you struggled a little bit on how to do the double brackets, but eventually you got there. You did some questions on it, no problem. But when it comes to an exam question, some students get confused whether they should use double brackets to factorize or single brackets to factorize. Remember, not everything with an x squared has to be a double bracket. There are some x squared factorizing that uses single brackets and you have to get used to that. The general rule is that when you have something like an ax squared plus a bx plus c, for example, you have an x squared followed by a number with an x plus or minus another number, this is where you normally would use double brackets. Although, look out for the difference of two squares. When these come up, it's usually x squared minus a square number, and they also use double brackets. So get plenty of practice on those. Now, the next one to look out for on the non-calculator paper is sequences. So with sequences, it's normally very straightforward. All you need to do is look at your sequence and find the difference. Perhaps the first part of the question might ask you to find the next two terms. So whatever the difference is, you keep adding. Now, these questions usually follow up by finding the nth term. If they asked you to find the nth term, then whatever the difference was, you add an n next to it, and then you go to the first term and then go backwards by that difference. And whatever value that is, you add that next to your number n plus whatever or minus. That's it, straightforward. So get plenty of practice on those types of questions for the non-calculated paper. Now, the next one that really throws some students off is frequency table questions. Now, you've got to understand that when it comes to frequency tables, you've been doing a whole lot of different types of questions. Sometimes you've been asked to draw graphs from it, perhaps bar graphs or frequency polygons. Sometimes you've been asked to find averages like the mean, like the median, like the mode. And when these types of questions come up on the exam paper, some students get confused on what they should do. So get plenty of practice on this for your revision for the non-calculated paper. And even the calculated paper, because this can also come up on the calculated paper. The one thing that I would like to advise you on this is look out for the grouped data. So the class intervals are in ranges. If that happens, and let's say they asked you to find the mean, remember you've got to find the midpoint and then draw an fx column and you multiply the midpoint with the frequency. And something to really watch out for is some students, they find the total of the fx column, and then when it comes to dividing by the total of the frequency, what they do is instead of doing the tally of the frequency, they divide by how many rows there are. So please don't do that because I've seen this happen over and over again and you lose marks for no reason. You could have done it. It was just one little number that really let you down. And if these frequency tables ask you to find the median, know when to do a CF column and when to use an FX column. FX columns are used to find the mean and CF columns, the cumulative frequency, are used to help you find the median. So make sure you guys practice this. Now, there are a whole other bunch of questions that I really feel that you should look out for and make sure you get plenty of practice on. These are topics like prime factor trees, estimation. A general rule of thumb, when it comes to estimation, make sure you round the numbers to one significant figures. This will work out and give you numbers that you can do in your head without a calculator. Remember, the aim is that you should be able to round the numbers because you're finding an estimation. You should be able to round the numbers and do the calculations in your head without having to resort to long multiplication or long division. Remember that as a golden rule of thumb. Secondly, when it comes to questions that ask you to round, make sure you learn how to round properly. Some students are happy rounding to decimal places, but often struggle with significant figures, especially when they have to, say, round a number which is in the hundreds to two significant figure or one significant figure. For example, rounding a number like 257.34 to two significant figures, they might write 26 instead of 260. Remember, you can't round a number that was in the hundreds suddenly to become 26. It doesn't make sense. So always ask yourself, is the number still representative of what it was originally? The next thing that I feel that you should get lots of practice on is standard form. So writing numbers in standard form and also writing numbers from standard form. Remember that first number has to be between 1 and 10. And then you write your times 10 to the power of something. Another tough topic that always comes up that some students find hard is powers and indices. Make sure that you know your rules for indices. So what do you do to the powers when you are multiplying? And what do you do when you are divided? Remember, for multiplying, you add the powers, and when you divide, you take the powers away. Now, there are lots of other topics which I could also mention, but this wouldn't be a help video if I didn't mention fractions. This comes up all the time, sometimes in various ways. So make sure you guys are familiar with fractions, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. Also, please, this is something that I've always seen you guys make a mistake with. Not all of you, but some of you, of course, yeah? Is making the denominators the same. You only need to make the denominators the same when you're adding and subtracting fractions. When you're multiplying and dividing, you don't need to worry about all that. They have their own methods. For multiplying, you just multiply the numerators across and the denominators across. And you can also look to cross cancel, obviously. For division, remember, it's keep, change, flip, and then treat it like a multiply. I have seen so many students who are so used to having the denominators and making the denominators the same that they even apply this when it comes to multiplying and dividing fractions. So make sure you know when to do this and when not to do it. Finally, guys, remember, some topics which appear on the non-calculator paper can also appear again on the calculator papers. I wish you guys all the best. Remember, keep practicing. And after you've practiced, practice some more. And after that, practice some more, because practice makes perfect and it boosts your confidence and gives you more familiarity with the questions. Bye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.